In this video, I'm going to beat FireRed using only the Nidoqueen-line. Before we get started though, I want to ask you a question, and I would like it if you could deeply reflect on this. How well do you think Nidoqueen is going to do? Whenever I sit down to do these challenges, I have my own internal biases. I either think a Pokemon's going to do fantastic, absolutely terribly, or somewhere in the middle. For this one, I was expecting Nidoqueen to be quite good, because Nidoking is the speedrunning Pokemon of choice in Generation 1. So have you decided if you think Nidoqueen is going to be good or not? Well, now let me spoil things. In FireRed, speedrunners do not use Nidoking like they do in Generation 1. Instead, the starter Blastoise is favored, which makes sense. Water types are really good because ice type coverage basically solves all of their problems, with one exception, that being electric types, but we all know that Surge is terrible. So with the Nidoking falling off of speedrunning status, I was in for a bit of a surprise today. Expectations were set very high. These are the rules for the solo challenge. I've also left them in the description in case you need to look at them later. Now, let's talk about starting as Nidoran female. For base stats, it has 55 HP, 47 attack, 52 defense, 41 speed, and 40 special attack and special defense. I really don't like it when all of the stats are not even multiples of 2, 5, or 10. Anyways, I'll just have to deal with this one. We have a medium slow growth rate. This is fantastic for solo challenges. Quick levels in the early game, and then slow levels in the late game after level 68. In terms of move pool, we don't start with great moves, Growl and Scratch. We get Tail Whip at level 8, but then at level 12 we get Double Kick, a fighting type move, which is going to give us a solution for Brock. Beyond that, the options aren't very good. Poison Sting, Bite, Helping Hand, Fury Swipes, Flatter, and Crunch. Now as a physical attacker, we do need to remember that all dark type moves will deal special damage, which is a little bit unfortunate. Through TM and HM is where things really get good for this line. Water Pulse, Ice Beam, Iron Tail, Thunderbolt, Dig, Shockwave, and Sludge Bomb, which I will remind you is in the post game after I defeat the champion for the first time. This is always so painful for poison types, especially this line. The only 3 poison type moves it learns are Poison Sting, Toxic, and Sludge Bomb. Really unfortunate. It's obvious what I have to do in the early game. I need to train until I level up to 12 to get access to Double Kick. With this move, I head into Pewter City and I face Camper Liam just to test out the fighting type move and see how it's going to do against his Geodude. This is a good test so that I can be informed. Am I going to fight Brock next, or should I do additional training? Maybe go over the damage rounding threshold at 13, or even more training all the way up to 15. In this case, Double Kick's doing enough damage, and the experience from fighting Camper Liam brings my Nidoran female up to level 13. So I'm gonna take on Brock now. First, it is level 12 Geodude. I'm going to be able to knock it out in 2 turns using Double Kick, even after it sets up once with Defense Curl. That's good for me. It didn't deal any damage. Next is Brock's Onix. It doesn't have Bide in this game, which is really good. Also here, I should mention Nidoran female's ability, which is Poison Point. It is an absolute nuisance to go up against in these solo challenges, but it's actually pretty good here as an ability against the Rock-type specialist. I poison the Onix early on, so I have passive damage along with the damage from Double Kick, and this gives me more than enough. Nidoran female takes a confident victory here, which I wasn't really expecting. With his Onix down, I level up to 14, only 2 levels away from evolution. Also, this badge gives me a boost to my attack stat, which I am primarily using at this point in the game. Although I will say Double Kick isn't especially useful from here on out throughout the early game, mostly because I have to rely on Scratch for bug types and poison types. You might be thinking about the occasional normal types like youngster Ben, who has a Rattata, but he's not mandatory in FireRed, so I'm just gonna skip him today. Fighting more bugs along Route 3 levels a Nidoran female up to 16, where it evolves into Nidorina. This brings with it a nice base stat total boost from 275 up to 365. Here's the thing though, I'm not going to be using a Nidorina for very long. Outside of Mount Moon, I pick up a Persim Berry. And then inside the cave, after grabbing some regular items like the Thief TM and an Ether, I grab myself a Moonstone and quickly evolve Nidorina into Nidoqueen, its final form. The base stat total boost this time is massive, up to 495. Nidoqueen has 90 HP, 82 attack, 87 defense, 76 speed, 75 special attack, and for the first time in the evolutionary line, it has a higher special defense, 85. So we're still a physical attacker, but our physical attack is only 7 points higher than our special attack, which means coverage moves will still be very usable. Also, Nidoqueen's move pool greatly expands. It has access to a bunch more tutors, as well as other TM and HM options like Earthquake, Shadow Ball, and Flamethrower. With most evolutionary lines, it makes sense to use the stone as late as possible so you can learn other moves. I'm thinking of you Growlithe in Generation 1. It learns Flamethrower at level 50. That fact always bothers me. Anyway, in this case, Nidoqueen is the opposite. You actually want to evolve it as early as possible so that you can level up to 22 and learn Body Slam, which Nidorina does not get access to. Now, there are also some other moves that I can get before Cerulean City that I wouldn't have been able to if I was still a Nidorina, and that is Mega Punch and Mega Kick through these two tutors. In this case, I'm only going to get Mega Punch. Mega Kick is just too inaccurate, and I don't think I'm going to use it. Okay, so hindsight is 20/20. I think I should have got Mega Kick because I'm not able to two-shot the Pidgeotto, giving it time to use things like Sand Attack, my least favorite move. Then Squirtle comes in. This might be a reason to delay the evolution as well, because now it is super effective using Water Gun against my ground type. Nidorina is a mono poison type. Because of this type interaction, I am taken all the way down to 4 hit points before I knock out the Squirtle, leaving the Rattata following his Abra to use Quick Attack, which knocks Nidoqueen out, giving me my first reset. This fight's easy if the Pidgeotto doesn't use Sand Attack. Then I knock it out, move on to the Squirtle. I can take care of it with Mega Punch over 4 turns, and from there, the remaining 2 Pokemon are simple to clean up. On Route 24, Nidoqueen levels up to 22, and I teach Body Slam in the place of Tail Whip. Learning this move now means I can bypass the Secret Power TM, which takes 1 additional trainer in order to obtain. So that's a small amount of time saving for me. After helping Bill, I defeat the Rocket outside of the city, get the Dig TM, and of course teach this to Nidoqueen right away. In Generation 3, it finally makes sense that it can learn this move, whereas in Generation 1, both Nidoking and Nidoqueen cannot learn Dig, and their prior evolutions don't get any ground type moves. In this case though, Dig is at its weakest in the series because it only has a base power of 60 in FireRed. Okay, so I'm starting to have a new bad habit crop up here in FireRed. Occasionally I'm skipping Misty just because I forget to fight her. This is usually because I want to grab the Dig TM and then I just keep going south to Vermilion City. I did that here today. I did it with Arbok a little while ago. I hope that I can cut this out fairly soon so that I don't waste more time backtracking to Surge. Although this isn't the biggest time waste. On the SSN, I pick up the Brick Break TM and teach it in the place of Mega Punch. I collect some berries, then go up against the rival, who's really easy this time around, even though his starter has evolved into Wartortle. With him defeated, I spent some time trying to cut this tree into Surge's gym, and then I realized, oh yeah, I haven't fought Misty yet. Even though I clearly don't have her badge in my badge case in the top left, I never look up there to track which badges I have, by the way. Maybe I should start making that into a habit. So I backtrack to Cerulean City to take on the water type specialist. Now, what's the way you know that I'm an honest YouTuber? Well, the fact that I could have told you that I did all of that SSN stuff to get to level 26 where Nidoqueen has exactly 54 speed. 1 more than Misty's Starmie. So that's a nice happy accident. Because I'm moving first, I'm able to easily 2-shot, and this gym battle is trivial. Lieutenant Surge, 1-hit Voltorb, 1-hit Pikachu, 1-hit Raichu. Well, I really wished that I had 1-hit Raichu because I keep missing since it's setting up with Double Team. Its best move Shockwave is ineffective against Nidoqueen, so it's going to have to rely on Quick Attack, but it really doesn't want to use this move. Apparently it's just going to set up all the way to +6 evasion, and Nidoqueen keeps missing. This was so annoying, and it wasted so much time. Even if I miss all of my moves, I might still win, because Poison Point can inflict the status condition to Raichu, but I didn't know this. Surge actually has a full heal, which he uses to cure the status condition. Eventually though, Nidoqueen hits with its last use of Dig, and this knocks out Surge's ace. Honestly, I think he wasted more of Nidoqueen's time than he would have if he gave me a reset. Double Team was really bad. On my way to Lavender Town, I pick up the Aerial Ace TM. This one's a little bit weird. Often it seems to me like I'm thinking a lot about the fact that it bypasses accuracy checks and going like, yeah, I should keep that in my bag for later on when it's going to be useful. And then it never is, so essentially the fact that I picked it up was just a waste of time. Also, at base 60 power, it doesn't have a lot of longevity. You're not going to be using this move for the league rematches, or even the first time through the league. There are better options, even just neutral return. Also, outside of Lorelei's rematch Dugong and Agatha's rematch Gengar, most Pokemon don't spam Double Team. Well, other than Surge. I think in challenges going forward, I'm going to try and be a little bit more judicial about when I pick this up. Like, maybe I teach it right away and then use it for Erica and get rid of it after that. I think that might be the best approach for Nidoqueen, especially throughout this section of the game by Rock Tunnel, where there are actually a decent number of grass-type Pokemon that it would be super effective against. At the end of the tunnel, I talk to the move tutor and teach Rock Slide in the place of Double Kick. Through Lavender Town, I pick up the return TM and then head into Celadon City to explore the Rocket hideout. This is where I like to mention these two Rocket guards. These guys always frustrate me when I'm a physical attacker because they have Pokemon with Intimidate, the most annoying ability. It is more annoying than Poison Point. Right now I'm running a fully physical set, but I don't need to do that throughout the remainder of the playthrough. Here you might be wondering, why won't I get Ice Beam or Thunderbolt right away? They are from the game corner after all. Well, I will have you know that they cost 4,000 coins each. That is 80,000 Pokédollars, and I have not saved up enough money yet. Usually in these solo runs with Evolution, I'm finding that I can purchase one of these TMs right before I face the Elite Four, and then I can usually squeeze out a second one right before the league rematches. That said, I could play in ways that synergize to get me this TM a little bit sooner. However, in this case, I don't think it's really necessary. I'm fine with running this physical set at this time. Brick Break is super effective against all of Giovanni's Pokemon. The rival in Pokemon Tower is next. Rock Slide one-shots Pidgeot. I use it against Execute and it's still 2 shots. There's no Gyarados on his team because the starter I'm facing is Wartortle. Maybe the Venusaur team would be easier to go up against, but that didn't seem thematically appropriate. Kadabra's a 1-hit, Wartortle's a 2-hit, and Growlithe is a 1-hit even after Intimidate. Unfortunately, Nidoqueen can't leverage its ground type against the Ghastly line in this game, unlike in Generation 1, but I do have Rock Slide to manage the ghosts. Now I'm going to talk about a battle that I never mention, which is against Marowak. This thing ends up being terrifying. So Body Slam turn 1, it uses Leer. Then it's paralyzed, but I'm not able to 3-hit. It then goes for Bone Meringue and almost knocks Nidoqueen out. I survive with red health and finish it off. If paralysis hadn't prevented it from attacking, it would have got me. Okay, on Cycling Road, I wanted to do some training against poison types. Seems like the thing to do with a ground type Pokemon, especially when they give good experience yields, but Levitate frustrates me endlessly. Last time in FireRed, I played Sandslash, another Pokemon that has significantly fallen off in comparison to its Generation 1 incarnation. Go check out that video if you're curious about how it is worse. This was the point in the playthrough that I was starting to realize that Nidoqueen is not the powerhouse that it is in Generation 1. And while I can complete the training here because I can't get poisoned, so there really is no threat, it just takes longer than I would have liked. Upon arriving in Fuchsia City, I'm going to get the best Generation 3 move in the entire game, Substitute, which I teach in the place of Brick Break, since it's a non-limited TM that I can buy from the department store later if I need it again. After completing the Safari Zone, I get the HM for Surf, which I can teach to Nidoqueen. This is another move that it gets access to that its earlier evolutions don't. Although, I don't think it's going to be that useful. In Kanto, water-type moves are just not that good unless you get the same type attack bonus when you're using them. And most water types have good special attack stats, but Nidoqueen doesn't really. Next I head to Erica's gym. After completing Cool Trainer Mary and her team of 5 Pokemon, I fight Beauty Lori, who has a single Execute. She's the mandatory person that you usually want to face in Red and Blue. I fight her today to just get a little bit more experience to level up to 40 over a damage rounding threshold before taking on Erica. Victory Bell is first. What can it do to me? Well, it could paralyze Nidoqueen using Stun Spore, which is what it does on turn 1. After that, it's kind of ineffective because its only attacking moves are Acid and Giga Drain. Poison Powder, of course, can't do anything. Even though Nidoqueen's paralyzed, I still think I have a good chance of winning here. The Tangela is just as ineffective. Poison Powder, Constrict, Ingrain, and Giga Drain is all that it has access to. Also, I learned here that Erica has a full heal, so she uses that to cure the Tangela's paralysis before I knock it out. Vileplume's last, it gets a critical hit, still doesn't do very much damage, and after 2 hits with Body Slam, Erica's done. I have a choice now. Do I go to Sylph, do some optional training, maybe fight Rival 5, and then go to Koga, or do I fight him now, get Surf, and then defeat Blaine? I decided to go with the Koga option. I'm a ground type. He's a poison type specialist. This should be easy. At least, if we just look at the type matchups. But that's missing all the information that really counts. So unlike in yellow version, he doesn't have bug types. Unlike in red and blue, his Pokemon have abilities, and in this case he has 2 coughing and 1 wheezing, all of which have levitate, so Dig can't do anything to them. I thought that substitute to block things like smokescreen and self-destruct would be all that I would need. However, what I was forgetting is that Muck is annoying, just like Surge's Raichu. It loves to spam minimize, but not only can it raise its evasion, it can also raise its defense with acid armor. So while it is the only Pokemon on Koga's team that Dig can hit, it's also the one that causes me the most issues. I think in the future, when I have Dig as my primary damage, I am not going to fight Koga just after how terribly this Muck went. Watch, it wastes so much of Nidoqueen's time. Thing is, unlike Surge, who is incompetent, Koga is actually marginally competent. He's not a great gym leader, but he's okay, at least in FireRed. In yellow, he's excellent. In red and blue, he's terrible. Now, I was certain that if I just stuck with it, eventually I would win. And Nidoqueen does manage to eventually knock the Muck out. Coughing's next. Here's the problem. I only have enough health to use 1 more substitute. But what I'm worried about here is Coughing breaking my substitute using self-destruct, leaving me exposed to the wheezing. If it does chip damage with just sludge or tackle, it could knock Nidoqueen out. Things get more complicated when Koga uses a hyper potion. Then Coughing self-destructs, I lose my substitute, and wheezing comes in. Also, Nidoqueen is not doing good damage to it using Body Slam, and I'm running low on PP. I guess I have to use Rock Slide. Maybe there's upside here for flinches, and unfortunately, I just barely don't have enough damage. Wheezing hangs on with red health, goes for tackle, and Nidoqueen faints. After what was an extremely extended battle. Okay, so how's this supposed to look? It's supposed to look like this. I go for Dig, it hits 2 times in a row and Muck faints. After that, I spam Body Slam, and then I defeat all of Koga's Pokemon, taking an easy victory with my Poison Ground type. I can't believe we had to dedicate this much of the video to this battle. 2 resets to this point in the run is not terrible though, so Nidoqueen's not doing bad, but it is definitely slowing down and running into more obstacles than I was expecting. But my feelings towards it at this point in the run were still pretty optimistic. I thought it had a good late game ahead of it. In Sylph, I do a little bit of training against people that give good yields. This brings Nidoqueen up to level 44 before I take on the rival. Pidgeot's first. Here things are really simple. Substitute to block Feather Dance in case it uses it, then Rock Slide to knock out the flying type. After that, Body Slam 2-shots the Execute. It can't really do anything to me, although Confusion is super effective, but it's obsessed with using status conditions. I thought that Body Slam would one-hit the Alakazam, but it doesn't. Luckily, its only damage-dealing move in this fight is Future Sight, so I take care of it in 2 turns and move on to the Blastoise, which is basically a Pelipper during this battle. It spams a bunch of Protect, wasting my time. Body Slam is doing about a third to it. Water Gun breaks my substitute. I thought that I might 3-hit, but I don't have the damage range. The thing is, Water Gun is its best move, so it doesn't have good options against me. Nidoqueen survives with 21 hit points, heals a little bit with a Citrus Berry, and then knocks out his ace. Last is Growlithe, and even with Intimidate, once again it's a one-shot. After that, I head to Cinnabar Island, fighting some trainers along the way. I wanted a little bit more experience, but I didn't want to overtrain in this playthrough. Whenever I start a new series, it's always the case that I'm fighting way too many trainers. It makes the late game far too easy. I'm trying to cut as much of that as is possible in these first playthroughs in 2025. I want to give each Pokemon the best possible results it can get, and by eliminating unnecessary grinding, I'm gonna save some time. For example, here is my FireRed tier list. With Nidoking, I got a time of 1 hour 23 minutes and 32 seconds, with 5 resets at level 71. I think that Nidoqueen should be able to finish the game at a similar level, if not a slightly lower level, just because I'm a better player now. I know about things like Substitute, which I didn't then. If Nidoqueen is unable to beat Nidoking's results, I would be truly surprised. That said, I think that Nidoqueen will beat Aerodactyl's results, earning itself a place at the top of the B tier, if not a spot in the A tier. To beat Aerodactyl, it'll need a time somewhere around 1 hour and 15 minutes. And to get into the A tier, it's going to need a time under 1 hour and 10 minutes. I'm not sure if it can give Hitmonchan a run for its money. 1 hour and 7 minutes is quite good, and the reason there are so many fighting types and psychic types at the top of the tier list is because they get access to Bulk Up or Calm Mind. Fantastic setup moves, which both Nidoqueen and Nidoking do not have access to. I do think that these 2 TMs will be the differentiating factor between most of the top performers in these runs and then the sort of B tier and C tier results. But still, Nidoqueen has good type coverage. I think it has a chance of doing quite well. Let's continue to see how it performs against Blaine. As of late, I've been learning a few things about fighting him. In this case, you're kind of baited into using Substitute because you want to block Arcanine's Intimidate. However, this is rarely the right choice, at least for most Pokemon, especially when you have super effective damage in the form of a move like Dig or Rock Slide. In cases like this, you just want to attack. Even if Arcanine hits you with Intimidate, it's going to be far better to make it through the rest of his Pokemon with higher health. By doing this, you are more likely to survive the attacks that Arcanine does do to you. In this case, I'm going to 3-shot the Arcanine. It goes for Fire Blast and luckily misses, because when it hits with its second Fire Blast, the amount of damage that it deals is way too much. I would not have survived 2 of those, but because it missed, I'm able to pull through with a win. Next, I head back to Saffron City to take on Sabrina. You'd think that she'd be scary because she's a Psychic type specialist, but she really isn't as long as you have a strong physical attack. That said, let's talk about the ways in which Nidoqueen has fallen off in comparison to Generation 1. Because in Red, Blue, and Yellow, you can pick up the Earthquake TM inside of Sylph, but it is not available there in FireRed. It's just replaced with an Ultra Ball, which is just an insult. In this case, I have to beat Giovanni to get access to Earthquake, and by this time in the game, Body Slam, Dig, and Rock Slide are not doing very much damage. I can't even one-shot her Mr. Mime, and it's not even setting up with Barrier. Surprisingly, after that Alakazam comes in, and it's much more frail. It has a defense stat of 43. Still, Nidoqueen's Body Slam is not able to one-shot. I would have been able to one-shot if I used Dig, so I'm regretting not going for that move. Either way, Alakazam just sets up with Calm Mind and then I knock it out, leading to her true ace, Venomoth. This thing's always scary, you know, it's a Psychic Flying type, so one of its types is super effective against Nidoqueen, and the other one is immune to my secondary typing. Luckily today, it's not an issue to clean up using Rock Slide. This is where we need to change things up a little bit. I have run all physical moves up until this point, but I can't continue to do that. There are a bunch of rock ground types, and I really don't want to be using Dig against them because now some will have access to Earthquake. There are 3 options for this: teach Water Pulse, teach Ice Beam, or teach Surf. If I teach Surf, then it'll be on my moveset until I go to the move deleter in Fuchsia City and get rid of it. Also, if I take it into the Elite Four, then I won't be able to get rid of it for the remainder of the league. Also, I don't quite have enough money to buy Ice Beam yet, so that leaves Water Pulse as the more flexible option. When I'm doing 4 times damage, this move should be good enough. What could possibly go wrong? I even did extra training in this gym just to prepare myself for the Elite Four. Giovanni is bad anyway though, so I don't anticipate this one being a problem for Nidoqueen. Okay, let's quickly check all of his Pokemon. All 5 of them have Earthquake. That's not great news to start the fight off, but with Water Pulse, I can easily one-shot both of the Rhyhorn. I also will have great damage against the Doug Trio, and in this case, Nidoqueen can one-shot. So I was pretty confident still, until I used Dig, which makes no sense because then Earthquake does double damage. Luckily, I crit his Nidoqueen, knocking it out with one of my own attacks. Nidoking is next, but Water Pulse doesn't do enough damage to one-shot, and because of that, Nidoqueen loses to Earthquake. So the solution here should be pretty obvious, just spam Water Pulse. But even then, the Nidoqueen and the Nidoking are going to get chances to attack with Earthquake, and I'm not sure that I'll survive both of their hits. Here's the thing though, I have an opportunity to set up because Giovanni's Rhyhorn is awful. It loves to spam Scary Face when the opponent is faster than it. Because of this, I get my substitute for free, and I'll have it for both the Nidoqueen and the Nidoking. Likely the first of them will break it, and then the second will use Earthquake, but I'll survive. That doesn't end up happening. In this case, Water Pulse crits the Nidoqueen. Because of that, the Nidoking breaks my substitute, and I easily defeat Giovanni. Okay, rival time, and I think it's important to emphasize Blastoise's best water type move. It is still Water Gun. I have no idea how this happened. Why didn't the developers give him Water Pulse by this time? Like, he should be using Surf, obviously. And in Generation 1, he has Hydro Pump. I don't know why he has Water Gun, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I expected that this fact alone would mean that Nidoqueen has an easy time against him, but that's not the case. The Alakazam is faster by 5 speed. After failing 1 turn with Disable, it breaks my substitute, and then I knock it out. This means I have no defense left over for the Blastoise. Also, my moves still aren't very good. I should have taught Earthquake by this time, but I was trying to take it easy on the rival after all his Blastoise is terrible. Unfortunately, this doesn't work out for me, and it gets me with Water Gun after using Rain Dance. Now, I did not realize that I should have taught Earthquake, so instead I go back to Celadon City, sell a bunch of items, and then I purchase myself a TM. I have a choice, Ice Beam or Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt will cover my weakness to Water-type Pokemon, but Ice Beam is going to be a better bet against Lance's team the first time through the league. If I bring up my tier list again, this is only runs up until the first champion, and that is how I rank all my Pokemon here, so I am always prioritizing this finish over the post-game finish. I felt like because of this, I needed to go with TM13 right now and not get Thunderbolt. I fight one trainer, leveling Nidoqueen up to 52, and then I use rare candies up to level 60. Water Pulse isn't especially good anymore, so I teach Shockwave in its place. This way I have super effective damage against the Pidgeot and the Blastoise. I don't really need a water type move for the Rhyhorn or the Growlithe, they're both pretty bad. This time I make it through the Alakazam with it just setting up with Calm Mind instead of breaking my substitute, so I'm in a much better position. At a higher level, with a special move, I can 3-shot the Blastoise, and this time I'm still on green health by the time it goes down. Nidoqueen is dominating now. Now, I didn't mention the Execute being a bad Pokemon, but in this case it no longer has a Psychic type move, Solar Beam, Sleep Powder, Poison Powder, and Stun Spore. So I set up Substitute and then I simply knock it out using Rock Slide. It does take a while, 4 turns in total. Alright, so I cleared that battle around level 61, but this is not close to level 71, which Nidoking was at when I beat the game for the first time with it. So I decided to do a little bit of training in Victory Road in order to level Nidoqueen up. I go to 62, and then I felt ready to take on Lorelei. I think it goes without saying that I would prefer to have Thunderbolt here over Shockwave. Still, I can just use Earthquake and 2-shot the Dugong. But unfortunately, it just barely doesn't get the one hit on the Cloyster. That said, unlike in Generation 1, this thing's moveset is really bad. The only damage-dealing water move it has is Dive, and it doesn't have Ice Beam. So knocking it out over 2 turns is fine. I even take a little bit of a detour grabbing a substitute before I take it out. Then, against Slowbro, I use Earthquake. I thought this was going to 2-shot, but it doesn't. As a result, my substitute is broken before the Jinx comes in. But powerful physical damage, in combination with a critical hit, ensure that Nidoqueen one-shots. That leaves only Lapras. I can use Rock Slide here for super effective physical damage, and it also might inflict a flinch, which I think I'm going to need, because both Earthquake or Rock Slide are not doing enough damage to 2-shot her ace. It uses Surf, Nidoqueen hangs on, uses one more Rock Slide, but it doesn't flinch and Lapras gets the knockout. When I was playing, I thought that I was going to need to level up before Lorelei. Apparently I didn't do enough training earlier on. I came back into the fight trying again with 2 more rare candies at level 64. Rock Slide is doing half now, however the Lapras has a Citrus Berry, so I still can't 2-shot. As a result, it's once again able to knock out Nidoqueen. Now sometimes I'm stubborn, so I came back in and tried one more time. I was going to train after this one, however, I just flinched the Lapras so many times. She uses a full restore, I continue using Rock Slide, even though Nidoqueen misses. On the next turn it flinches, and because Lapras has already used its Citrus Berry, this is a 2-shot. So I made it by Lorelei. Let's keep going. Bruno's pretty straightforward. I'm going to use Earthquake on the Onyxes. The second one, unfortunately, is not a one-hit, so he's able to heal it and waste some of my time. Earthquake one-shots the following Hitmonlee, but the Machamp takes more than one hit. Plus it uses Bulk Up, surviving my next attack, and then it uses Scary Face, lowering my speed. This is all just a little bit of a nuisance, though. I can resort to using Shockwave and finish it off with special damage. Hitmonchan's next. I think I should have used Shockwave here because it does like to use Counter occasionally, but in this case it chooses Sky Uppercut. It doesn't do much damage, and over 2 turns I finish it. Agatha is where things are really sad. I have to rely on Substitute in combination with Rock Slide here for all of her ghosts. I wish Earthquake was as good as it was in Generation 1. The only Pokemon I can hit on her entire team is Arbok, and it is by far her weakest Pokemon. Still, Nidoqueen doesn't have any issues in this battle. It kind of just steamrolls her entire team using the Rock type move. So that's that. We're moving on to Lance, and for this one, I'm going to teach Ice Beam. But that means I need to drop one of my current moves. Getting rid of Substitute doesn't make much sense. It is my best setup move after all. Getting rid of Earthquake makes no sense. Shockwave I want to keep around just for the Gyarados, so I'm going to delete Rock Slide now. Even though Lance's lead has Intimidate, it doesn't matter because I'm relying relying on special damage for this fight. Plus, I can set up Substitute and Dragon Rage cannot break it in one turn. However, Shockwave with 4 times damage doesn't do enough to one hit. That's unfortunate. I have my Substitute broken as a result, but on the following 2 turns I finished the Gyarados. I didn't decide to re-establish my defense. I don't think I'm going to need it. Aerodactyl's next. It uses Wing Attack and then Hyper Beam, and I knock it out with 2 turns of Ice Beam. Dragonite falls to a single turn of the special move, leaving only 2 Dragonairs, both of which are 1 hits. So now that Nidoqueen is ready for the champion, let's quickly check in again with the tier list. The Lance split it just got was 1 hour 9 minutes and 33 seconds. This doesn't leave it enough time on the clock to get an A tier finish today, but I think it's confidently going to get a B tier finish. And beating Aerodactyl's time seems more than manageable at this point, provided that the champion isn't a significant challenge for Nidoqueen. This battle starts as you would expect. Set up Substitute against the Pidgeot so it can't use Sand Attack, Whirlwind, or Feather Dance. Then, I'm going to use Ice Beam, knock it out over 2 turns. I resort to Shockwave here. I thought it was going to 2-shot, but it ends up just barely not. Next is Alakazam. Now, unfortunately for me, it is faster than Nidoqueen by 1 speed. This is pretty bad. That allows it to set up with Reflect and then break my Substitute before I knock it out with 2 Earthquakes. Without my defenses, now I have to go toe-to-toe with the Blastoise when I'm going to take a lot of damage. Thing is, I have green health, so it sets up with Rain Dance, and it looks like Shockwave is doing about 1/3. After my second hit, I was confident that I was going to knock it out on the next turn, but it eats a Citrus Berry, and now I know I'm not going to KO. However, it keeps missing Hydro Pump. The champion uses a full restore. I decide to use Substitute just to stall out Hydro Pump since it only has 5 PP. Also, this wastes time for the rain to go away, meaning Hydro Pump will deal less damage. Also, it has to break my Substitute first, which is what happens on the next turn, but he doesn't have another full restore for his ace, so I knock it out and move on to the Rhydon. For this thing, I think it makes sense to use Ice Beam for special damage. The Rock Ground type just barely hangs on. It chooses Earthquake, which of course is super effective, and Nidoqueen faints. Okay, so that's not great. I got really lucky against the Blastoise, and then I lost to the Rhydon. I'm not going to get lucky against the Blastoise again. As predicted, this time around, it hits with Hydro Pump and obliterates Nidoqueen in 2 turns. So I decided to switch up my moveset, teaching Attract in the place of Shockwave. I can use Earthquake for primary damage against the Blastoise. This can work, but it can also fail, as you see here, where Blastoise attacks twice in a row. My time is getting kind of close to Aerodactyls now. Unless I'm able to do this quickly, if I don't start getting results right now, Nidoqueen is going to lose its grip on the top of the A tier. Luckily for me, this time around, Attract works against Blastoise, so I finish it off and move on to the Rhydon with half health remaining. I'm not going to be able to one-shot with Ice Beam, and I'm sure that Earthquake won't either since it's physical. I'm also fairly certain that Nidoqueen will get KO'd from Rhydon's Earthquake at its current level of health, so I have to go for Attract. And unfortunately for me, it doesn't work. Rhydon still attacks, and that's that. In the next battle, things go really well once again. I make it by the Blastoise. I have my Substitute in place, which allows me to knock out the Rhydon. This is where the unexpected happened. I have to 2-shot the Executor using Ice Beam. Because of that, it's going to be able to attack once. Nidoqueen survives with 7 hit points, which unfortunately for Nidoqueen is just not good enough because the Arcanine that's next has extreme speed. I continued to get losses. I tried a strategy using Rest, but this just doesn't feel good. Then the Pidgeot can use either Sand Attack or Feather Dance, ruining Nidoqueen's chances from the beginning of the fight. With this reset here to Blastoise, Nidoqueen has lost its grip on Aerodactyl's position. It is going to get a worse finish. I continue to lose to the Blastoise, trying Rest again and then getting hit by Sand Attack, but eventually I make it back to the Blastoise. My time is now pushing 1 hour and 20 minutes, so Nidoqueen might not even make it into the A tier. I finish the Water type off, move on to the Rhydon with my Substitute intact, allowing me to finish it with Ice Beam. Then against the Executor, it does not attack, this time choosing Sleep Powder, which misses. As a result of that, I knock it out, move on to the Arcanine, and I can use Earthquake here to knock it out over 2 turns. I survive the flamethrower, and Nidoqueen clocks in with its time, 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 12 seconds, with 16 resets at level 67, with a game time of 4 hours and 15 minutes. So League Round 1 was not as easy as I was expecting it to be. I did think more experience at a lower level would be possible when compared with Nidoking, but now I'm questioning this approach, especially because the League Round 2 rematches are just around the corner, and I don't think Nidoqueen is really set up for success here. During the Sevi Islands plotline, I can pick up the Sludge Bomb TM. It's cool that Nidoqueen gets this now, but it's not that good against the League rematches. Earthquake has a higher base power, so I want to be spamming it when I can. Obviously, Sludge Bomb isn't good against Agatha's Pokemon, and it's not great against Lance's either. I think the champion is going to be the only battle where this move turns out to be useful. Before the League rematches, I go back to the game corner, purchase myself more coins, and with them, I get the TM for Thunderbolt. But unfortunately for me, I can't really teach it before Lorelei because I want to hang on to all of my other moves. Earthquake is my primary damage, Substitute is a powerful setup move, Attract is useful for stopping Pokemon that are going to cause major problems, like potentially Lorelei's Lapras or maybe her other Pokemon. They are better this time around. The Cloyster, for example, has Ice Beam and Surf. However, it just sits there while I knock it out slowly using Earthquake. It's trying to use Supersonic, which is objectively not a good choice. I knock out the Jinx, move on to the Lapras. Here I use Attract, and because of it, I am able to knock out her ace. Piloswine is all that's left. While it does have Earthquake, it's not able to do enough damage. Okay, Bruno. I have Substitute here so that his Steelix can't lower my speed using Brock Tomb. This move also doesn't do very much damage to Nidoqueen. Then I can use Earthquake, knock out his lead in 2 turns, and have my defense for the remainder of the fight. This time around, Machamp does not have Bulk Up, so I 2-shot easily using Earthquake. While I lost my Substitute here, it doesn't really matter. The Steelix does hit with 1 Earthquake, but it only does half, and then I knock it out. So this fight's not going to be an issue. Just to play around counter, I use Ice Beam turn 1 against Hitmonchan. It does choose the powerful fighting type move, but it can't reflect special damage. Earthquake does enough to knock it out on the next turn, and with that, I'm headed to Agatha. This is where everything falls apart, by the way. Nidoqueen at level 74 has 178 speed, which is 2 less than her ace Gengar. Right now, the only move that I have that can hit her Pokemon is Ice Beam. I don't want to give up any of my moves because all of them will be useful at some point later in the league, which means using Ice Beam, I have to 3-shot her first and her last Gengar, both of which have Psychic. Making matters even worse, the Misdreavus has Psychic and the Arbok has Earthquake. This first fight against her goes really well. I'm using Attract to play around the Gengar. It doesn't break my Substitute for the second time. I have the leftovers, so I'm recovering health every turn, and I knock her lead out. Then against Arbok, I'm able to 1-shot with Earthquake. That's nice. On Misdreavus, I have to 3-shot, which is annoying, but in this case, it chooses to use Attract, which wastes its turn because Nidoqueen does not fail to attack. So I've made it to the final Gengar. I have 4 uses of Ice Beam left, and unfortunately for me, that means unless she doesn't use a healing item, I'm probably gonna lose here. I also need to get lucky with Attract, and that is not happening. I fail a Substitute as a result, and then Gengar finishes Nidoqueen. I tried this fight one more time, and then I started to realize that Ice Beam is just not gonna cut it. I need more PP to deal damage to the ghosts, so I reluctantly taught Thunderbolt in the place of Substitute, since I will want to use this electric type move against Lance. However, losing one of the best setup moves in the game is not ideal, but I don't want to get rid of Attract because I think it's going to be my answer to the champion's Blastoise the second time around, just like it was the first time around. Without Substitute, Agatha is more difficult, as you would expect. I've also used rare candies up to level 76 now, and still I have to 3-shot most of her Pokemon. The damage ranges just don't change that much. I reset over and over and over again here. This run started to feel like Hypno's post-game league. Just to check in with its results in the post-game tier list, Hypno is currently the worst Pokemon with a time of 43 minutes and 13 seconds. If this seems absurd to you, it kind of is. It basically all boils down to the fact that Hypno was not fast enough to move first against Agatha's ghost Pokemon, and then as a result it accumulated so many resets and required so much luck. If I ran Hypno again, I would run a speed beneficial nature to solve this problem. Now with Nidoqueen, I knew that it eventually could luck through this, but after a total of 6 resets to Agatha alone, I wasn't feeling confident in pulling that off in the next few minutes. So I decided to black out and do training during the earlier portions of the league. I have one problem problem here though. If I try and buy more full restores, you will notice that I have 0 Poké Dollars. The reason for this is because I spent all of my money purchasing the Ice Beam TM and the Thunderbolt TM. So now I have a limited number of full restores to accomplish this league rematch run, which essentially means I'm not going to be able to use healing items before Bruno every time I face him. If I do, then I'm locked into the remainder of the league at the level that Nidoqueen is at, or I have to blackout, fight random trainers around Kanto, collect money, and then purchase full restores, which is obviously not going to be the efficient play. Because of this, I didn't want to use a full restore and then fight Agatha at a low-ish level. I wanted to ensure that I was getting 2 shots, at least on the first Gengar and hopefully the Misdreavus. So I trained all the way to level 84 before fighting her again. This fight doesn't start well because she puts me to sleep with Hypnosis, but after that I do wake up and I'm 2-shotting the first Gengar. From there, I can one-shot the Arbok even if it hits me with Intimidate. Beyond that, I'm going to be using Attract on the Misdreavus, but I don't think I need it since I can 2-shot using Ice Beam now. The final Gengar, I'm going to use Attract here because Ice Beam just barely can't 2-hit, but with a 3-shot and a Freeze helping me out, I knock out her final Pokemon. Sometimes I roll the damage range required to get a 2-hit, by the way. That was without a critical hit. That leaves only the Crobat, and of course I'm able to knock it out over 2 turns. So Nidoqueen is moving on to Lance, which isn't as easy as you would expect. While Thunderbolt can one-shot his Gyarados, I'm not able to one-shot the Kingdra. I have to 3-hit provided I don't get a crit, which I do on the first turn, but it's setting up Dragon Dance. He uses a full restore, and then he gets 1 hit in with Surf, doing about half before I knock it out. The first Dragonite falls to a single hit, but the Aerodactyl gets a lucky critical hit just before I knock it out with Earthquake, and that finishes Nidoqueen. The Kingdra was better in the next fight, so I arrive at the Aerodactyl with green health, but once again it gets a critical hit. Luckily, Nidoqueen pulls through and is able to 2-shot after surviving its follow-up Hyper Beam. That leaves only 1 Dragonite. Nidoqueen is faster, and I one-shot using Ice Beam. So now it is time to try the champion again. First of all, we're going to learn something really fast in this fight. If we have our speed dropped by the Heracross using Rock Tomb, everything gets brutal because then the Alakazam is going to move first, and that is just not a scenario I want to be in. Also, the Arcanine and the Blastoise will be moving first, making things really bad for Nidoqueen. After the Alakazam knocked me out once and twice because of a speed drop, I clued into what I had to do. Nidoqueen, at long last, needs to learn Sludge Bomb in the place of Ice Beam. This gives me good damage against the Heracross, so I can knock it out over 2 turns. In this case, I get very lucky because Rock Tomb misses, so my speed is intact. Earthquake one-shots Alakazam, then against Tyranitar I can continue using this move and 2-hit, although its Earthquake does do decent damage to me before I knock it out. But I have the leftovers, so I'm recovering a little bit of health every turn. For the champion's Executor, I'm going to be using Sludge Bomb, which is super effective, and it can one-shot. So he's only got 2 Pokemon left over, Blastoise and Arcanine. For the Blastoise, since my health is quite high, I don't need to use Attract. I can just go for Thunderbolt and 2-shot, leaving only the Arcanine. And since the Blastoise set up Rain Dance with its 1 turn in battle, now Arcanine's damage from Overheat is cut, and I can use Earthquake to knock it out over 2 turns. Well, what would have been 2 turns, but it uses a bunch of full restores and wastes my time. Eventually, I take it down, and Nidoqueen clocks in with the worst second league performance that I have got so far in FireRed. 46 minutes and 1 second, with 22 faults consisting of 10 resets and 12 blackouts, at level 86 with a game time of 6 hours and 42 minutes. Here's the post-game tier list. Hypno's results have officially been beaten. Well, not really beaten. Like a Pokemon has done worse than Hypno now. That's kind of disappointing. Nidoqueen learns itself the last and the only placement in the F tier of the post-game tier list. If you're wondering why a Pokemon who had a dismal post-game like Beedrill isn't showing up here, that's just because I hadn't figured out my methodology for this section of the game when I filmed Beedrill. So it wasn't operating under the same constraints that all of these Pokemon are. As a result, I don't think it's really fair to compare its results alongside all of these Pokemon. That said, I do think if I went back and did Beedrill again in the post-game, maybe it would do better. I don't know. It was a pretty bad Pokemon in the late game. That's another poison type, and right now poison types are not faring very well in this post-game list. Arbok is in the E tier, 3rd to last, and Nidoqueen is last. I guess Golbat did decent with a C tier placement. Well done, Golbat. Okay, time to rank Nidoqueen's first champion time. It was not able to beat out Aerodactyl's 1 hour and 16 minute time. It did not come close to beating Kabutop's 1 hour and 17 minute time, or Dugong's time, which was very close. However, it did get very close to beating Hypno. The Psychic type had a time of 1 hour 19 minutes and 4 seconds. So in my first run with it, Nidoqueen did not beat Hypno's time by 8 seconds. There's kind of an interesting parallelism here. In both tier lists, Nidoqueen is ranked right behind Hypno. However, in the first tier list, they're both kind of near the top, although not exceptional performing Pokemon, whereas in the post-game tier list, they're right at the bottom. Okay, so Sandslash disappointed as a ground type. Nidoqueen did do better. It outpaced Nidoking's time, but this is purely due to experience. I'm sure eventually Nidoking will outperform Nidoqueen. This run was not what I expected it to be. I really thought Nidoqueen was going to do a lot better than this. In the end, this poison ground type has just fallen so far from Generation 1. And I think in general, ground types are all just going to perform much worse in this game. If you haven't yet seen Sandslash struggle its way through FireRed, check out this video here. If you support me directly, thank you so much. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.